or listening on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Dewbs & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock and I'm Michelle Dewberry. Coming up tonight, apparently Britain is facing a 1979 moment all over again. That's according to the Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. What do you think to that? Do you feel that we're in that position once again? Are things worse perhaps than they were then, or better? Your thoughts on that. And also, get this, pregnant women and people that have just had babies, they are going to be set to have reduced sentences if they find themselves having to go to prison. What do you think to this? This is about sentencing guidelines changing, saying that actually pregnancy and birth should be a mitigating factor. Do you agree with that, or is it basically trying to get off the hook for your wrongdoings? Also, eco-protesters that are being accused of criminal damage can no longer claim a climate emergency justifies their actions. Good. It's great to see some common sense finally prevail, but do you think it's the right move or not? Maybe you think that actually this climate emergency so-called justifies any action whatsoever. Tell me your thoughts on that. Also, in today's society, when it comes to the upper echelons of society, do you think there should still be closed shops, male-only members clubs? Should there still be a thing where the hobnobbing of the rich and the famous and the powerful goes on and excludes women? Your thoughts on that? Yes, indeed. We've got debate on all of that coming up over the next hour. But before we do, let's cross live for tonight's latest news headlines.
Michelle, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, the former US President Donald Trump has fired a warning shot at NATO, saying it's time to pay. In a GB News exclusive, he told Nigel Farage member countries need to stop taking advantage of the United States. And he said if he wins the US elections, America will only defend those who pay their bills.
The United States should pay its fair share, not everybody else's fair share.
No, fair enough.
I believe the United States was paying 90% of NATO, the cost of NATO. It could be 100%. It was the most unfair thing. And don't forget, it's more important to them than it is to us. We have an ocean in between some problems, okay? We have a nice, big, beautiful ocean. And it's more important for them. They were taking advantage, and they did. They took advantage of us on trade, and they took advantage on...
So if they play fair, if they start to play fair, America's there.
Yes, 100%.
Well, you can see that full interview with the former US President Donald Trump on Farage in an hour's time, right here on GB News from 7 o'clock. Now, the first person to be convicted of cyber flashing in England and Wales has been jailed for 66 weeks. 39-year-old Nicholas Hawkes sent unsolicited, explicit photographs to a teenager and a woman. The Justice Secretary described the offence as a distressing crime which couldn't be normalised, saying the sentence would send a clear message that that behaviour merited severe consequences. Meanwhile, 4 people have been hurt and a dog believed to be an XL bully has been shot dead by police in South London. And a warning for viewers watching on television: the following footage contains some distressing content. Let's show you this clip captured of the attack that happened in Battersea just after 10 o'clock last night. A group of people desperately trying there to stop the dog, with one person trying to throw a blanket over it to stop it attacking. The 4 victims were taken to hospital for treatment of non-life-threatening injuries, and the Met Police saying a 22-year-old man and a 21-year-old woman have been arrested on suspicion of being the owners of a dog dangerously out of control. The high street fashion retailer Ted Baker is set to be put into administration 32 years on from its creation. The chain's owner, Authentic, which bought Ted Baker in 2022, said the business had built up a significant level of debt. Ted Baker employs almost 1,000 staff and runs more than 80 shops across the UK. But the owners declined to say whether any shops or jobs would be lost. The financial problems come after years of turmoil at Ted Baker, when the business parted ways with its founder Ray Kelvin after allegations of harassment. Britain faces a 1979 moment, the Shadow Chancellor will say in a speech tonight, as Labour seeks to bring about a new chapter in Britain's economic history. Addressing finance leaders this evening, Rachel Reeves will liken the challenge awaiting the next government to that faced by Margaret Thatcher when she took over. She's made it clear she plans to reform the Treasury if Labour wins the next general election. And the Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, outlined the plan.
We are on the cusp of an opportunity in this country, an opportunity for a decade of national renewal where we can get growth back into our economy, make people better off and start to turn the page on 14 years of failure from the Conservatives. If Labour is to win the election later this year, it will be the worst fiscal inheritance that any party's had since the Second World War. And that's why we talk about a decade of national renewal. There will be some things we can do immediately, and public services are obviously one of our priorities.
The First Minister of Wales has delivered an emotional resignation speech after facing questions in the Senate for the final time today. He said he's now looking forward to life on the backbenches. Mark Drakeford, who's stepping down after 5 years in the job, was quite emotional as he talked about how difficult the last year has been.
Personally, the last 12 months has been the hardest and the saddest of my life. And people will not see beyond the chamber those small acts of kindness that happen every day from people in every part of this chamber that help someone to get through those very, very difficult times.
Mark Drakeford speaking earlier on today. Now, the Prince of Wales has been visiting housing initiatives in Yorkshire today, promoting his homelessness project. The future king spoke to landlords in Sheffield, as well as the local authority there, to see how his homewards venture could help ease pressure on councils. The outing comes after The Sun published pictures and a video of Prince William with his wife, the Princess of Wales, at a farm shop in Windsor at the weekend. It follows weeks of social media speculation surrounding the health and even the whereabouts of Princess Catherine. Those are the top stories. For the very latest, sign up to GB News Alert, scan that QR code on your screen right now, or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much for that, Polly Middlehurst. I am Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight. What did you think to that last story, by the way, about William and Kate? Do you care about this story? Are you into it? Are you sitting there analysing the pictures, wondering what on earth's going on, or are you just sitting there going, pack it in, your thoughts? And that will determine whether or not we touch on that story a little bit later on the programme or not. Alongside me till 7, my panel, the parliamentary sketch writer for the Daily Mail, Quentin Letts, and the former Labour advisor, Mike Buckley. Good evening, gentlemen, to both of you.
Michelle.
You know the drill as well, don't you? One of my viewers got in touch yesterday and said, can you tell Michelle to stop saying that we know the drill? Because, yes, we do. But, yes, But what about any new viewer that's just tuned in tonight? They might not know the drill, so I can't ever stop saying it just in case, because you do know the drill. It's not just about us three. It is about you guys at home as well. What is on your mind tonight, especially about that Princess of Wales there? Do you care about that story or not? You can Quinton is snoring. I can't quite work out whether or not that's because he doesn't care about the Princess of Wales or because he's had to listen to me for the last 1 minute.
Nothing against Princess of Wales. I just find that story, I mean, it's such a worn-out story now.
Well, the viewers will be the judge. We might come on to it. We might not. You will be the judge of that at home. GBViews at gbnews.com, or you can tweet or X me at GBNews. I'm going to try and keep Quinton awake. Coming up tonight, Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves, she is giving a speech. She reckons that Britain is facing 1979 moment all over again. Quicker than I don't know what. Tim, my viewer, said, oh, OMG, Michelle, I would love to have that 1979 experience again. A Ford Capri 3-litre and a new date every night, he says. Tim, you sound like quite a smoocheroo, but I don't think she means that, quite frankly. I think she was talking economically. It's got me wondering, do you think this country is as bad as it perhaps was then? Is it worse or better? Your thoughts on that, Quinton?
Leonard Cohen records. That's what I was listening to.
Was
1979. I remember eating a lot of Kit Kats during that election as well.
I was a twinkle.
You were a twinkle.
Yes.
You still are a twinkle in some of our opinion. But no, poor old Rachel Reeves, she's desperate for something to say because she's boxed in by constraints on spending and tax and all that. So poor old sausage, she's looking for something to say. She's come out with this 1979 line. I looked, before I came here, I looked at a 1979 Hansard for Treasury questions.
Did you? You live the high life, don't you? Rock and roll, rock and roll.
And
what did you glean?
The comparisons just don't work. Although in some ways, we're worse now than we were in 79. The national debt is much worse now. It's 85% now. It was 55% of GDP in those days. But in other ways, this is nonsense. And if you look at everything from sort of top rate of tax, inflation, interest rates, it just doesn't bear any sort of comparison, I'm afraid.
No? Do you agree with that, Mike?
Well, I mean, everybody's misunderstanding this. She isn't saying that the economy is in a similar state now to where it was in 1979. What she's saying was that 1979 was a sea change in the way that our economy was run. You know, from a fairly centre-left model to Mrs Thatcher's, very much right-wing free market model. What Rachel's saying is that when Labour gets into power, after the next election, there will be a sea change in the way that our economy is run. So she's making that point, not making a point that our economy is in the same pace.
Yeah,
they will.
How so?
Because Labour would introduce, rather not me, Labour would introduce a set of policies that would improve the economy, will get the economy growing, which it signally has not been doing for the last 14 years.
What's like the big headliner?
There'll be investment in parts of the economy that haven't seen investment for a long time. They'll free up planning control, so we'll be able to build housing in this country, which is desperately needed, and so they'll be able to invest in green infrastructure, which is desperately needed.
So do you think that's the exciting headliner, this investment in key industries such as green? I mean, don't forget, of course, there's been a bit of toing and froing and slippage in terms of just what will be invested, of course, on that green agenda from Labour.
I don't hear anything in that, with great respect to Mike, that's really convincing. It's going to be radical. Every party says, we're going to change the planning system. It's in every manifesto. They all talk about green stuff. Well, actually, a lot of that has happened, rather too much, in some of our opinion. But I just don't think that Reeves and Starmer are going to, if they get in, are going to have the wiggle room for any of this. It's very hard to see where the investment, or spending as it's called, is going to come from.
Well, she will argue that we're going to see a decade of national renewal.
We have to see a decade of. I mean, bear in mind, we've had an economy that hasn't really grown in the last 14 years since the Conservatives came to power. Our wages haven't gone up since the financial crisis, which was in 2008. This is a result of successive government decisions, primarily austerity, the fact that they've just stuck the life out of the economy, a Brexit deal which has harmed our economy, and then the last couple of years you had Liz Truss with the mini-budget, which has caused a disaster, of course, and Rishi Sunak's been there for about 18 months. He's done nothing to fix the situation. We desperately need a new economic model in this country.
By the way, way,
we need a new party in control.
The economy is so broken is because the whole economy was shut down for a long period of time, literally ground to a halt, because of an illness. And Labour were championing longer lockdowns, perhaps earlier lockdowns, deeper lockdowns, again, with no idea, no consequential thought in terms of, if I do this, what will be the impact on anything, whether it's children...
When Labour was last in power, the economy grew from when we got in 1997 right up to 2008 in the global crisis.
And that's fascinating, but you're not answering my question.
What's the question?
I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about, one of the reasons that we're in the absolute mess economically that we are, is that politicians of all stripes were desperate to close down this economy during COVID, and that it was an act of self-harm economically.
I mean, in fairness to the government, the current government, I think they got lots of things wrong in the pandemic. What they got right was that they did put us into lockdown when they had to, which they had to, especially pre-vaccine, to prevent many, many more people dying, and I'm glad that they did that.
But I thought even when Boris was trying to bring us out of that, it was Labour was one of the loud voices in saying, actually, no, we shouldn't be lifting that at this stage.
No, Labour largely supported government action and actually government decision-making on when we went into lockdown and when we came out, actually.
So
that's not entirely true.
It's not my recollection.
It's largely true.
Keir Starmer was saying, no, this is all being stopped too early. And, I mean, I think...
I mean, we'll have to go back through the records, but largely I think Labour supported government timing on that. I mean, to be honest, at the time, I was one of the people thinking we should have stayed in lockdown longer.
And do you regret that now when you look back and you see the damage?
No, I don't. I mean, I think you know, as a country, we're in a rock and a hard place. If we hadn't gone into lockdown, or if we'd come out earlier, many more people would have died. Of course, we couldn't make that choice. But granted, lockdowns have resulted in damage. I mean, I'm most concerned about the damage it's done to kids, particularly young kids and preschool kids.
Indeed.
Which is going to take a long time to undo.
So let me ask you this then, right? So if Labour are the answer to everything, there's this fantastically exciting innovation and all this investment and this renewal, and it's going to be so exciting, we probably won't sleep the night before or whatever.
Well, I'm glad you're so excited about it.
Why is Wales then not this shining beacon of absolutely everything being in a perfect state? Because Labour have, you know, quite a lot of opportunity there to be influential and all the rest of it. So why isn't that a shining star then? I mean, because I think the Welsh government's done a very good job. I think Mark Drakeford has done a very good job. But, of course, they have to work within a United Kingdom in which Labour isn't in power. Once Labour's in power in Westminster... So, for example, many viewers will get in touch with me in Wales and they'll talk about, for example, the Welsh NHS as one of the examples.
They've had power devolved to them, but they haven't had extra money devolved to them. So that's the limitation.
But
so the Welsh government can have great policies.
I thought they did have some elements of tax decisions devolved to them.
I don't think they've got any more tax-raising powers than, say, a local council has.
I thought they did. So you're saying you're saying that the reason that that Wales is not a beacon is because they don't have enough money.
They don't have the tax-raising power, say, that Scotland has. So in Scotland, they can vary income tax rates. In Wales, they don't.
The funds that they've got, effectively.
Yes, I do. But they've had very limited funds because of austerity, which has been in place for 14 years.
So does this wash with you, then, that this whole notion that if only Labour have got more money, everything's going to be kind of some kind of, I don't know what?
Most noticeable thing, I live near Wales.
Do you?
I live on the Welsh-English border, and... it's the only border that the Welsh have, actually. The thing you notice most about it is the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. And also the fact, in Wales, they're much more liberal about buying coal. So you're allowed to buy coal still in Wales. But it's the speed limits that drive me nuts.
Well, they became enforced, didn't they, yesterday?
Has to be said, by the way, Mark Drakeford, earlier, he's a controversial figure. I wouldn't agree with his politics at all. But I thought there was something rather noble about him, and it was rather moving seeing him doing that. His wife died recently, and... you know, hats off to Mark Drakeford as he retires from public life, even though some of the things he's done may not be great.
I think he's a very decent man, actually.
Yeah.
And because we showed that clip, didn't we, where he was getting very emotional. And obviously you don't hear us when the headlines are running, but you actually came in, didn't you, and said, you know, he's getting that emotional because perhaps of what happened to his wife.
Yeah. And also, I mean, you forget, Michelle, the pressure that these politicians are. I know we all love to complain about politicians. And I'm a sketch writer, for goodness sake. I'm always chucking pies at them. But actually, extraordinary pressure. And when they step down, there must be just sort of a release of adrenaline or stopping of adrenaline.
But they wanted that pressure.
It does.
They wanted that pressure. They wanted that kudos. They wanted that power. They wanted that platform.
But it still comes at a cost, you know, and particularly when you have a family tragedy. It is a choice.
It's a choice.
But I think he's served for 5 years. I think he's done a very, very good job. But he's done it, and as was shown earlier, he did have support from all sides of the House, including Conservatives and others.
Yeah, I just don't really buy this whole, the pressure that they're under, because no one forces them to
You're
be
a
MP.
tough old bean.
No, I think so many people go into politics because they are egotistical. A lot of them get drunk on their own self-importance.
I don't think anybody would describe Mark Drakeford that way.
I'm talking more generally in terms of politicians. I'm not saying I don't have sympathy for him as an individual. I'm talking more broadly. I don't look at any politician when they're retiring and go, oh, gosh, yeah, but the pressure must have been so difficult. I don't. Maybe I'm a hard-nosed...
You are.
Maybe I'm a hard-nosed noveler, but to me, you make your choice, you get paid well for what you do, you get a huge amount of, I don't know, power for what... I hate that phrase. I hate the notion that these people seem to think they've got all this kind of power over everybody, but to some degrees they do.
Well, we elect them to improve people's lives, and Mark Drakeford can step down knowing that he has.
You're tough as Norwegian beef.
And I wish that were the case for all politicians. Sadly, it isn't. Which is why it's important who you vote for later this year.
Well, yeah, and it'll be interesting, actually. Do you think Labour will perhaps galvanise people that are disenfranchised, disconnected with politics at the moment?
I mean, who knows what turnout will be in the next election? When you look at the polls, and certainly, there was a poll yesterday when twice as many people were saying they were going to vote Labour as they were going to vote Conservative. So there's a massive gulf there. But in terms of what turnout will be, I don't know. I mean, one of the things that I'm concerned about is just how trust have dropped off a cliff, in large part because of Boris Johnson being such an inveterate liar. But also, I think people have, over the last 14 years, become quite disillusioned with politics because things have got so much worse in terms of public services, in terms of income, and in terms of just people's general well-being.
I don't think Boris's lies had anything to do with... Well, they had... they will have...
I mean, I believe they did.
But I don't think they had as much to do with the public disengagement as you might think. Funnily enough, I think the fact that Boris got booted out, people voted for him and then see that the person they voted for is no longer Prime Minister, I think that's been a very...
I mean, you can't argue that Partygate wasn't just a huge shock to the nation. The fact that the rest of us were doing our bit in the pandemic.
Funny enough,
meanwhile, he was having parties. I mean, that was huge, and that was, of course, the number one reason for him going.
I am going to disagree with you, because actually I don't think it was such an issue on the doorsteps that...
Well, I had it... I mean, I knock on doors to the Labour Party and people talk to me about it a lot.
Yeah, well, I think people are more...
They don't now, admittedly.
Wasn't a shock to me. I thought it was all a bit pathetic. People were having work meetings and people were desperately scrabbling around, taking pictures from office meetings into gardens. Look at how close they started. They were having work meetings, desperately trying to make out that when there was a work
meetings
meeting,
don't involve going to Tesco with a suitcase and then filling it up with alcohol.
And someone had the audacity to bring a bit of cake and celebrate happy birthday at the end. People had a meltdown. I thought it was a bit pathetic, really, and a little bit embarrassing. But many of you will get in touch and say, but that, Michelle, is because you didn't lose anyone during the pandemic. And if I had have lost someone, many of you tell me, then perhaps I would feel differently.
I did lose
you do. Did you? Yeah. And did you feel differently about Partygate as a result?
I agreed with you about it.
Did you? Well, there you go. Many different opinions, I'm sure, out there. Get in touch and tell me your thoughts. gbviews@gbnews.com. Coming up after the break, if you're pregnant, and I mean actually pregnant, not a fella trying to pretend to be, in order to be let off, do you think you should be given a lesser sentence if you have to go to prison or not? Your thoughts. I'll see you in 2.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
So after his mad dash to see his father last week, Prince Harry predictably went on TV to talk about it. He gave his first interview to Good Morning America, whilst apparently being filmed by a cruise that were doing a documentary on the Invictus Games. He didn't disclose his father's diagnosis, but frankly, even the fact that he was on TV talking about it was concerning. No wonder they're keeping him at arm's length. This is what he said.
How did you get the news that the king was ill?
I spoke to him.
And what did you do next?
I jumped on a plane and went to go and see him as soon as I could.
How was that visit for you emotionally?
Look, I love my family. The fact that I was able to get on a plane and go and see him and spend any time with him, I'm grateful for that.
An illness in the family can have a galvanizing or sort of reunifying effect for a family.
Absolutely.
Is that possible in this case?
Yeah, I'm sure. Throughout all these families, I see it on a day-to-day basis. The strength of the family unit coming together.
He also said that he loves his family, but then he said that he had his own family in America. So which family does he love? The late Queen's last few years of life were marred with accusations of racism, which Harry later backtracked on, claiming that they hadn't actually used the word, so inadvertently admitting to gaslighting us all. But the Sussex's stock is falling in the States, and the only thing that makes them interesting is their proximity to the royal family. And now the King is ill, Harry has even offered to muck in and take on official duties to help his father. Look, I want to see reconciliation and love and joy, but I'm afraid Meghan has yet to even speak to her father as far as we know, and Harry didn't apparently even reach out to his brother. Whilst his dad might fall for it, I doubt William will be as soft. Good luck with that, Harry.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
If they know something about the drugs and if he lied, they'll have to take appropriate action. Okay, let's get out of here. I got to go back to work.
Join me tonight at 7 o'clock on GB News. The full interview with Donald J. Trump, and he makes it absolutely clear. He's running, he believes that he is going to win. This is an interview you will not want to miss. Britain's questions answered tonight exclusively on GB News at 7 o'clock. Join me.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company till 7 o'clock tonight. Parliamentary sketch writer for the Daily Mail, Quentin Letts, and the former Labour advisor, Mike Buckley, is alongside me. And it's hot in here, everybody. And it's not just because of the spicy stories that some of you guys are telling me at home. 1979 seemed to be quite an interesting year for a few of you. There was a nice story there, though. One of you said that you met a lady and you went on to get married, and you've been married ever since. I like that story. That's nice. I asked you tonight about William and Kate, this whole ridiculousness that's been going on. I've got to say, divided opinion there. So many of you getting in touch saying, please, please don't talk about this nonsense. Right. Other people, though, actually, they are interested, they are engaged. In case you've been asleep, this story dominated so many of the front pages today. Did you see it? It's something. It was on the front of most of them, actually, in one form or another.
That's not the Princess of Wales.
I find this really ridiculous, Quentin.
Yes,
this
it
obsession.
It is ridiculous.
What's the matter with people?
I don't know. I would make such a bad newspaper editor because I've got no interest in the story at all and couldn't get worked up about it. But that is why I am merely a sketch writer and not one of our great organs.
Story?
I mean, I'm glad she's okay, but basically my thought with this has been, leave her alone. She's had an operation and she's recovering. Just leave her be.
I know.
You know, I don't understand why there's been this hounding of her, you know?
Who cared about the photograph being tweaked?
Well, exactly. I mean, it's common, you know, it was common back in Elizabethan times, never mind now.
Mr. Holbein to do a bit of a...
Well, exactly. I mean, this has been happening for centuries, people.
I don't know anyone. I mean, all you've got to do, I said this the other day, if you go on, for example, a dating site, what people pretend they look like versus what they look like in reality is two different things.
It's
when
like
you go on social
newspaper
media,
picture bylines.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
They shouldn't have done it, but it really isn't the big deal that it's been made out to be.
It's all very,
anyway,
very,
she's
very
fine.
odd.
We've seen her walking.
Yeah, it's very, very
you know, it's good.
No, because there was a split. I said to the viewers, they can decide there was a split opinion.
What have they decided?
Some people are
split
not
opinion.
interested. Some of them are.
Is it
So do you know what?
48-52?
It was.
Well, let's hope not.
I've not counted it up, but I hope it's not 48-52. We're not going to rerun this referendum on here. We've given it a nod. That'll do now. I do think it's a little bit pathetic, and I think if you are somebody, who's sitting there literally with your magnifying glass out trying to find, is there a bit of a pattern here or there that's perhaps wrong? Is there something edited? Get a bit of a life. I don't mean to be mean or anything, but come on. I thought she was supposed to be out of duty anyway till Easter. It's not even Easter yet. Don't wish time away, everybody. Anyway, I hope she is well. Should we draw a line and move on? Yes, that's what I say. Let's talk about pregnant women, shall we? Because pregnant women and women that have just given birth are going to have potentially their sentences reduced for most type of crime if they find themselves having to go to prison. This is all because pregnancy, childbirth and postnatal care will now be determined as mitigating factors. This will be here in England and Wales, and it'll come into effect at the start of April. And I wonder what you make to this. Now, someone has been in touch, wants to remain anonymous, so I shall honour that, but I think their comment is interesting, so let me read it out. This person says, I work as a medic in a female prison with a mother and baby unit on site. I'm a registered paramedic. This person says that pregnancy, in their view, should absolutely not lead to a reduction in sentence because crime is crime no matter what. They should be treated the same as everybody else. They go on to say there's healthcare on site and support for the mums. There is even on-site midwives. The care and support they get is second to none, and thereon and thereforth. What this person says is reducing sentences will essentially just become an opportunity for an easy way out of being punished for criminal actions. What do you make of that?
It's an interesting point of view, but I feel I disagree with that. I'm surprised that there isn't already a regime where mothers-to-be are given lighter sentences. It depends entirely, in my view, on the offence. If the offence is one of violence or something like murder, for instance, you couldn't possibly give someone a reduced sentence because with those sort of crimes. But if it's other offences, then it strikes me this sounds a rather humane thing. And to me, I slightly recoil from the idea of someone giving birth in prison. It seems to me wrong, but perhaps I'm just being a wet liberal.
Mike?
I mean, I didn't know the stats on this, actually. I was just reading about it. And women in prison are 7 times more likely than women are not in prison to have a stillbirth. And they're twice as likely to give birth prematurely, which puts both mothers and babies at risk. So given those numbers, this should absolutely have been in place donkey's years ago, and I'm very, very glad that it's being put into position now. Clearly, there are other ways to punish somebody for a crime, but what is absolutely true is that the mother may have committed a crime, the baby has not. And anything that puts the baby at risk needs to be done away with, including, if necessary, the mother being in prison.
However,
Obviously,
there is the argument, maybe the baby would be better looked after, which would listen to the eyewitness account we just heard.
Well, clearly that's for social services to decide.
Yeah, might be better looked after in prison.
I mean, if the baby isn't going to be well cared for, there's provision in place through social services for that to be addressed.
I do want to state the obvious point that there's a really obvious way to not have women giving birth in prisons and all the rest of it, and that is for those women not actually to be committing crimes in the first place, obviously. I saw the same stats that you saw, Mike, and it pricked my eyes and ears up as well when I heard those kind of stats, because they are really alarming. What was it again? About 7 times more likely to have a stillbirth or something like that.
Twice as likely for premature,
yeah. 7 times more likely stillbirth, twice likely. But then, and I don't know if I was being harsh, I was thinking, well, how much of that is a reflection of the fact they're in prison? Because I know in male prisons, a lot of the population, for example, take drugs. And if there's a female prisoner that's taking drugs and happens to be pregnant, well, then, of course, you're going to be exposing yourself to greater risk of stillbirth and all the rest of it. So for me, I saw those stats, but I didn't really conclude anything from them other than they were sad. And I would have wanted a bit more information about what else.
Well,
the
piece I've read, probably the same as the piece you've read, doesn't go into detail as to why. Exactly. But nonetheless, that is the outcome. So either something has to be done in prison to make that not the case, or those women need to be not in prison. But whatever happens...
Maybe instance now that if you're a lady and you're coming up for a court case, you might go and get yourself up the duff.
Well, that's exactly the point that one of my viewers, Michael, makes. He says what's going to happen next is that any would-be criminal, if they try and get themselves pregnant in advance of their crime, perhaps, or in the gap before sentencing, then they know they'll get a lesser sentence. Ian says, I'm a retired prison officer. I've worked in male and female establishments, and it's a well-known fact, he says, that female criminals found guilty of comparable crimes to men already have reduced sentences given by the courts. He says, if anything, we need to be going the other way, and female sentences need to be increased in line to fall as a comparable to men. What all this quite
prisoner cell block age.
Well, that's
I mean, we already have a massive
view.
prison population compared to most other nations that are comparable to us.
Let me ask
we
you
already
this,
have
though.
way too many people in prison. Adding to that, particularly women, is A, unaffordable, B, there isn't enough prison space, and C, probably wouldn't lead to any beneficial outcomes in terms of crime.
Let me come back on you, though. You've just knocked back on what Michael said there in terms of equalising sentences between men and women. I must confess, I've not studied hugely whether or not there is this disparity, so I'll take him on his word. He's worked in that profession. He suggests that there is. Why would you suggest that if that was the case, why shouldn't those sentences be equalised? Why should a woman get a different sentence to a man for a comparable crime?
Because I'm probably sexist, and I just am more suspicious of blokes, and I don't know, it's probably very wrong of me. But I am inclined to be softer on female suspects, I guess.
But you see, I find that fascinating because...
I mean, I haven't thought it through properly, but that would be my honest answer.
As a woman, you can't have, on the one hand, start crying and begging everyone for equality when it suits you, and then on the other hand, start saying, whoa there, you know, I'm a female, so therefore treat me better and, you know, more loosely and softer.
You can make that argument, I can't.
Do you think, though, that all of this actually, we've got ourselves in a real pickle in this country in terms of prison population and prison capacity?
Yeah.
We've barely got any capacity now. We've already had that conversation a couple of weeks ago or recently when we was talking about we're going to release now prisoners early to free up space. Isn't all this kind of stuff about how can we reduce sentences just tinkering around the edges to free up capacity? Don't we just need to build more prisons?
We probably do, because the population's going up.
Do you think that we need just more prisons?
No, we don't. We need to question why we put so many more people in prison than comparable nations.
Why do you think
there are other ways? There are other ways to deal with criminality than putting more and more people in prison.
Like what?
At the taxpayer's expense for extended periods of time.
Like what?
I'm not an expert in this area, but clearly we are doing something wrong as a country if we're putting so many more people in prison than, say, France, Germany, other nations that are like us.
I don't think we put enough people in prison. I think there's too many people that know that they can wander around doing all kinds of things, either to other people or to people's properties or to people's possessions, and they know that the worst that they're going to get is a slap on the wrist.
We need to look at why people are committing crime in the first place, you know, what are the causes of that, and then we need to look at other ways of punishing people that are not custodial sentences. I mean, as we know, one of the problems is that you put somebody in prison and people, you know, many criminals say, or ex-criminals say, I learned how to be a criminal properly in prison, and then they come out and do something else because of the people they're then spending time with. That isn't good for them. That isn't good for society either.
I think you can get over intellectual about this. One of the reasons people commit crime is it's easier to go on the nick than to do a job.
And this whole notion now, I see it all the time. I shared this video the other day of this fella. He was in, I think I can say where it was. He was in a Marks and Spencer store, and he had not one, but 2 bags, ladies and gents, and he was filling them. He was swiping the upmarket chocolates in his bag. The amount of people that responded and said, well, you know, there's a cost of living crisis. And I thought, how pathetic.
Yeah.
You think that this fella is filling up 2 bags worth of luxury chocolates because he can't afford to eat or feed his family? How pathetic. He's doing that because he's a chancer who thinks he can get away with it.
I mean, what we want in the criminal justice system is, obviously, we want people who've committed a criminal act to be caught and they need to be punished. That's absolutely right. But we want to get them to a point where they don't commit crime anymore. And for a lot of people, putting them in prison does not result in that. They go into prison, they get out, they commit another crime. And what we need to do is rehabilitate people. I have to say, I'm not an expert on this, but I know there's been a lot of good thinking done on ways to, A, punish people and, B, rehabilitate them so they don't commit crime anymore. That is not just incarcerating people and leaving them to it.
Do you think everyone's capable of all criminals are capable of being rehabilitated?
No, I don't. I think obviously there are some exceptions, but I think that is true for the vast majority. But clearly, some people need to be put away for life. I mean, Wayne Couzens springs to mind. I mean, nobody that person, you know, can never be released from prison, and it wouldn't be safe for society if he was.
Because some people would say, when you got someone like the likes of Wayne Couzens, bring back the death penalty, do away with him. Why spend all of this fortune keeping him in prison for what?
Because that isn't what we do, and also Clearly, you cannot do that, even for somebody like him. I mean, clearly, we all know that he did what he did. But you can't do that because there are miscarriages of justice which take place.
What do you think to that? That'll spark up some thoughts within you. In the case where there's no uncertainty whatsoever, it's clear as day that the person did those kind of acts. Do you think we should even engage, people might say, even just perhaps a referendum on the subject of capital punishment? What about that whole notion, though, of what prison is actually for? Is it punishment? Is it rehabilitation? Is it a mixture of two, of the both, sorry? And do you think we need more prisons or less prisons or what? Your thoughts on all of that. Really fascinating subject, law and order, and the way we manage it, or we don't, should I say more accurately, in this country. And I want to speak about that after the break, because a judge now, he's basically, you know, these eco-protesters that think that they can walk around chucking paint everywhere and all the rest of it because they think that the climate is basically on fire and about to somehow combust. Well, anyway, a judge has now said that actually acting like you do because of a so-called climate emergency is no longer a reasonable excuse. What do you think to that, Sue and Two?
Hi there and welcome to the latest GB News forecast from the Met Office. Cloud will thicken for many of us over the next 24 hours, turning damp, but the rain does ease later on. Now we're going to see a weather system approach from the southwest, associated with an area of low pressure that's forming at the moment, and that's going to push a finger of rain into much of Wales, southwest England, and then overnight Northern Ireland, southern, eventually central Scotland, as well as parts of the Midlands and East Anglia. Now, the far southeast likely to stay mainly dry, 10 Celsius here, and the far northwest of Scotland also dry with clear spells, a touch of frost as we start off Wednesday. That's the best place for any bright weather first thing. Elsewhere, a lot of cloud cover, those spells of rain continuing through the morning, turning heavy for a time across parts of Wales and northern England before eventually the rain fragments and pulls away, but it does tend to stay damp across this central swathe of the UK. A few showers elsewhere, but actually Western Scotland, Northern Ireland brightening up nicely, feeling fresh here, but feeling warm in the southeast where there will be some afternoon sunshine and highs of 18 Celsius. Thursday's a very different day. We start the day with outbreaks of heavy rain across the northwest. Strong winds moving in as well. The rain spreading across Northern Ireland and Scotland during the morning and early afternoon. Thickening cloud across England and Wales, but the rain not arriving here until much later on. Friday, a return to sunny spells and blustery showers, the heaviest downpours towards the northwest.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you until 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, I do like it when you're in, Quincy.
Can we wear our bikinis next time?
It is, I've got to say,
it's terribly hot in here.
You're a car, Quinton. You're a car.
It's quite warm, I've got to say. We're pushing on through, though. We're
it's
troopers.
The male menopause. I'm feeling hot.
We're troopers here. The parliamentary sketch writer for the Daily Mail, Quinton Letts, and the former Labour advisor, Mike Buckley, with me till 7. Divided opinions on that last story there, in terms of whether he's fanning himself. Everyone is fanning himself. Close your eyes. You might think you're in Barbados.
Oh, that's you.
It is. It's that warm.
London W2.
Your freckles will be coming out soon. Anyway, look, divided opinion. One of my viewers has said, Mike, you're right, he says. There are alternative punishments to prison. He kind of loses you a bit, though, I think, on his final sentence. He says, bring back the birch. I'm not quite sure that's what Mike had
that's not
in mind.
really where I was aiming at, no.
You started off together, but you did kind of
then we
depart
diverged.
ways.
Hey, let's take the positive.
Yes, Elizabeth says, Mike mentioned we put so many more people in prison than other comparable countries. She says some might question whether or not that is because we seem to be a magnet for other countries' criminals. She says, let me know your thoughts on that one.
They'll be hyperventilating it off, with all this stuff.
Charles says, what about getting the less serious offenders to work more in the community so that they actively give something back to society and feel a part of it? Well, there you go.
Great suggestion.
Great suggestion there, Charles. That's got Mike's nod of approval there. Let's talk, shall we, these so-called, eco-warriors, these eco-protesters now. Whether or not, I always find it fascinating when they think they can wander up to somewhere and, for example, chuck paint all over it and all the rest of it. It seems to be that there was some kind of loophole that basically said if you genuinely believed that the climate, damage and all the rest of it was so intense that somehow you could perhaps get let off if you did criminal damage in this way, because you could argue that if the landlord of the property or the owner of the property or whatever it was truly understood the nature of the emergency, then they might be somewhat sympathetic to your actions. Anyway, long story short, a judge has ruled now that that cannot be used as a permissible defence. Where are you on this, Mike?
Well, there's a balance that needs to be had between peaceful protest, for example, on things like the climate crisis, which is clearly the biggest crisis that we face, not just as a country, but as a planet, and people's private property. So I actually am in favour of this because I think people do need to be able to protest about the climate emergency and the lack of action on the climate emergency. That's absolutely right. That doesn't need to mean, and it shouldn't mean, damaging people's private property. So I think this is probably a good judgment, and I'm glad to see it's there.
Good.
I think it's nuts. It's nuts that anyone was ever being let off vandalism charges just because they're doing this patronising argument. Oh, the owners of the property would have didn't understand the issues at hand here. It's outrageous that was ever the case. Mind you, it does strike me that climate change protests, it's very 2023. It really is. It seems to me that the wind's gone out of that. Now, the new thing is Palestine. That's what we're protesting about this year. That's the must-have look. And you just get the impression that we're hearing less about just stop oil than we were 18 months ago.
I mean, my understanding is that Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion have changed their tactics, so I think they're probably doing this kind of protesting less.
No, it's because the renter mob have gone off.
So I don't think it's so much that they're not still passionate about the issue. I mean, of course, they are still passionate about the issue because it's still there. But you're right, there has been a much more coverage of Gaza and Palestine in recent times, and for obvious reasons as well.
I hate giving coverage. When people go and sit on roads or they go and chuck paint on this or they smash this, I hate it. I hate giving them the oxygen of publicity. I think the best thing you can do with those kind of protesters is to just ignore them. The more you put them on telly...
I fully understand why they're doing what they're doing, because you see the disconnect between what the scientists are saying and what politicians are doing, and it's absolutely gargantuan. So I'm glad that they are protesting, and I'm glad that they're making the point that they're making. But I don't approve when it comes to causing damage to other people, or indeed just getting in somebody else's way.
I think they should be obliged to pay for the damage that they cause.
I think they should be obliged to clean it up.
Well, clean it up, the damage the other day to an oil painting of Balfour.
That was absolutely awful.
They should be forced to repair the thing.
That, of course, was linked to the Israel-Palestine conflict, that one, wasn't it? Not much sympathy, I have to say, coming through for the protesters here. Nigel says any protesters that behave in a criminal way like this should be financially liable for the damage that they do or the delays that they cause. That's Quentin's point there. They'd never be able to pay back some of those costs, though, would they?
Well, then they might not do it.
Well, yes, that is also a good point. Anthony says our criminal justice system has become far too soft over the years. He says it's swung too much in favour of the criminals. They forget, he says, about the victims of the crimes. Is that fair or not? It's coming up after the break. Do you think the kind of upper echelons of society, the men, should have their own spaces, male-only members' clubs? Should they still be a thing? I suspect that one of my panel could perhaps be a member of such establishment. I bet you can't guess who. See you in 2.
I'm very glad to say it's not me.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Absenteeism. And parents whose children miss a week or more of school face increased fines in a government drive to tackle absence.
This is another one of those government policies which has done nothing to improve the education of our children. In fact, since this was originally introduced some 10 years ago, the educational standards for our children, the 11-year-olds who can't read when they go up to primary school, have got worse and worse and worse. So it's not working. So what do? They just increase the fine, like that may make it work. Most of the parents who get fined are taking their kids out so they can take them on a holiday before the holiday companies push the prices up. And frankly, as a parent, if I've got a £600 discount on my holiday versus a £60 fine, I'm going to go for the £60
You'll suffer the fine.
Yeah.
Let's not forget the other huge absence that children had recently during COVID. Schools were closed for months and months on end. Online learning was really not making up for that. So how could, it's very difficult for the government to say it was fine for us to take your kids out of school for months, but if you take them off for a few days to go to Disneyland, then you are the worst parent ever and you should
But also, it's the pandemic that caused some of the problems with absenteeism now.
Absolutely.
Because the mental health issues that some of these children now have.
And there are tens of thousands of children, they call them ghost children, that have simply disappeared from the school register. So it would be nice. It's really, really scary situation. I'm not saying that the government is, taking great measures.
Well, I
to
think
that.
one of their plans is to have a national register, which would help with that.
Which would definitely help. But I think they can't deal with the real problem, so they're going after actually perfectly, decent parents who are just taking the odd day off, to save money, frankly.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Don't forget as well, straight after me, you've got Nigel Farage with none other than Donald Trump. You don't want to miss that, everybody. I shall certainly be watching that. The countdown is on for it. But coming back here with you till 7 o'clock tonight, myself and the parliamentary sketch writer for the Daily Mail, Quentin Letts, and the former Labour advisor, Mike Buckley. Now, the Guardian's not happy, everybody, because one of their headline stories today was about a private members club that is for gentlemen only, the Garrick Club I refer to in London. There's accusations now, Quinton, that it's all the kind of upper echelons of society, all the powerful...
It's a cabal of important, powerful people who are running the country.
And I thought to myself, when I heard descriptions like that, I bet Quentin Letts is somehow involved. Are you?
I've been to the Garrick a few times. It's all right.
Are you a member?
Actually, no, I'm not a member of that one.
Right.
I'm a member of another gentleman's club. Madame Fifi's massage parlour on Dean Street. But they do a very good savoury. I've been to the Garrick a few times. It's a beautiful building, and the grub's pretty good. I had a very good veal chop there last time. But the idea that these people are running the country is, I think, a little far-fetched.
Right, well,
because
why
most
can't
of them
women...
are old geezers who've got a lot of custard down.
Why can't women be members?
Because it's a gents' club. My daughter, one of my daughters, is a member of an all-women's club called the University Women's Club, and they don't allow blokes in. It's an outrage. No, it's not. It's a free country.
So fair's fair, says Quinton. Mike?
I mean, it's archaic and it needs to change.
What is?
You know, is my view. The fact that the Garrick doesn't admit women members. So there are lots of these members clubs, you know, across London, probably in other parts of the country as well. And you know, you have to pay for membership. So it is well-to-do members of society that go. I've nothing against them existing, but all of them have changed their constitution. Those that were once men only, you know, they all now admit women. The only exception now is the Garrick.
No.
The last time the Garrick had a vote, over half its members voted to let women in, but they need a 2/3 majority, apparently, to change the rules. So there are hopes if they have another vote that they'll change the rules. To be honest, though, I mean, one of my thoughts is this is archaic, it shouldn't exist anymore. My other thought is, well, why are we talking about it if we've got nothing more important going on?
The Guardian journalist who wrote this story is Amelia Gentleman. That's her surname. And she is the daughter-in-law of Stanley Johnson, or a daughter-in-law of Stanley Johnson, father of Boris. And he's a member of the Garrick. So I think it may be a tricky...
They may have differing views. I mean, that family has proven that there are different political, cultural views present within the Johnson clan, are there
There may
not?
be family issues here.
There could possibly be. So I do hope that they change the rules, because it does seem odd in this day and age that this institution exists and they don't admit women members.
And I think the thing, I mean, just to be frank, I genuinely could not care less if there is a club that I'm not allowed into because of my sex. I do, though, think that if you're going to start...
You're allowed in, though. They let them in.
Yeah, but not as members.
Yeah.
But I do think if you're going to start, you know, having all of this kind of respect and all the rest of it for single-sex spaces for men, then you can't, as a society, allow the ridiculousness that goes on in female spaces when a man sticks a dress on and a wig maybe and a bit of lipstick if he's feeling bold and says that he's called Sharon and then wants to be allowed into that space, and then those establishments then buckle and let those men actually into things like changing rooms of women. That really, really annoys me. But on these kind of socialising clubs, I don't really mind about it, but the flip side of it would be that actually, Mike, if you're trying to get on in life, I don't know, if you want to get on in whatever, whether it's corporate life, politics, and all of the kind of networking is going on after hours among the men only, it's quite hard then, isn't it, to climb your way up?
I don't think, I mean, I don't really know, but I don't think you need to be a member of the Garrick Club to get on in any particular sector of society, whether it be politics or banking or anything else. There are lots of others of these clubs. If people want to be a member of a club, they can choose another one and do their networking there if need be. I'm sure if there's networking to be had at the Garrick, whatever your gender, you can be invited to spend time there by a member, but obviously that member would have to be a male.
We have a transsexual in my all-gents club.
Do you?
And he turns up at the bar, I mean, she turns up at the bar dressed as a woman now, and nobody bats an eyelid. But there was discussion about this, and could this person still remain a member of an all-male membership club as a woman? And yes, they can, because when elected, they were a he.
Yeah, but hold on, because it's even more simple than that. A trans woman is a biological man.
Don't get me on
so
that. So
yes, they can still be. I'm
not going to get myself
of a biological club. Anyway, I reached out to the Garrick and I asked for what is their transgender policy, because I thought to myself, do you know what? I might start identifying as Michael Dewberry. I might feel like a man for the night and see whether or not I can get in. Funnily enough, they didn't reply to me on that one, so I suspect I'm allowed not to be a member. Your thoughts on all of that? Many of you saying, though, many men getting in touch saying, well, I can't join the Women's Institute. So why can't we all have our own spaces? Lots of you getting in touch saying, please, Michelle, please. Many of you need a bit of time away from your wife. You want your private men's spaces. It's almost time for us to finish now, which is wonderful, because I'm going to ask Quinton to let me into the secrets of what goes on among gentlemen in gentlemen clubs.
A lot of boozing.
That is not for 6 o'clock hours, I can tell you.
Boozing and snoozing.
After the break. For now, though, thank you, gentlemen, for your company. Farage and Trump up next, the big one, the Knights.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, and welcome to the latest GB News forecast from the Met Office. Cloud will thicken for many of us over the next 24 hours, turning damp, but the rain does ease later on. Now, we're going to see a weather system approach from the southwest, associated with an area of low pressure that's forming at the moment, and that's going to push a finger of rain into much of Wales, southwest England, and then overnight Northern Ireland, southern, eventually central Scotland, as well as parts of the Midlands and East Anglia. Now, the far southeast likely to stay mainly dry, 10 Celsius here, and the far northwest of Scotland also dry with clear spells, a touch of frost as we start off Wednesday. That's the best place for any bright weather first thing. Elsewhere, a lot of cloud cover, those spells of rain continuing through the morning, turning heavy for a time across parts of Wales and northern England before eventually the rain fragments and pulls away, but it does tend to stay damp across this central swathe of the UK. A few showers elsewhere, but actually Western Scotland, Northern Ireland brightening up nicely, feeling fresh here, but feeling warm in the southeast where there will be some afternoon sunshine and highs of 18 Celsius. Thursday's a very different day. We start the day with outbreaks of heavy rain across the northwest. Strong winds moving in as well. The rain spreading across Northern Ireland and Scotland during the morning and early afternoon. Thickening cloud across England and Wales, but the rain not arriving here until much later on. Friday, a return to sunny spells and blustery showers. The heaviest downpours towards the northwest, along with gusty winds.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's still time to win our giveaway packed with seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won. Cash to make your bank account bloom. Plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon.